I had spent 2 years sending money to my younger brother, Brian, believing I was helping him keep his life together. Every month, I transferred a portion of my hard-earned salary, thinking it was going toward rent, bills, and essentials for his 2 kids. Brian had always painted a bleak picture, an ex-wife who refused to contribute, mounting debt, and a job market that seemed impossible to break into. I didn't question him. He was my brother, and family supports family, or at least that's what I had always believed. It wasn't until our mother's birthday dinner at an upscale restaurant that everything came crashing down. The evening had started off normally, chatter about work, lighthearted gossip, the usual family pleasantries. Then Brian, sitting across from me, casually mentioned his recent trip to the Maldives. At first, I thought he was joking. Maybe he meant a trip he wanted to take. But no, he had already been. He leaned back in his chair, grinning as he described the private villas, the crystal clear waters, the full-course meals. I felt my stomach twist. "You went to the Maldives?" I asked, my voice steady but my pulse racing. Brian barely glanced at me. "Yeah, with what money?" He shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "Yours." A heavy silence fell over the table. The air seemed to shift, the background noise of the restaurant fading into nothing. I could feel the weight of my parents' stares, the way their expressions darkened not in shock, but in silent expectation, as if they were already bracing for my reaction. I clenched my jaw. "You mean the money I sent you to help with rent? The money for your kids?" Brian rolled his eyes, lifting his wine glass as if this was all beneath him. "Relax, Lisa. The kids were fine. They stayed with Mom and Dad. I just needed a break." Across the table, my mother stiffened but said nothing. My father took another bite of his steak, avoiding my gaze entirely. Meanwhile, my nieces sat quietly in their seats, their dresses looking as worn out as the last time I had seen them. I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my composure. "You told me you were struggling." "I was," he said, cutting into his food, struggling emotionally. "I deserved a vacation, Lisa." "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. That was the word that broke something in me. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "So instead of buying new clothes for your kids, instead of paying your bills, you decided a luxury vacation was the priority?" Brian huffed, waving a dismissive hand. "You don't get it. I had to put myself out there, meet someone new. That's how I met Jessica." I frowned. "Who the hell is Jessica?" He smirked, as if he had just won some grand prize. "She's amazing. Owns her own business, drives a Tesla, exactly the kind of person I should be with." A scoff came from one of our cousins at the end of the table. "So, you used Lisa's money to find a rich girlfriend?" Brian ignored her. My hands curled into fists under the table. "That's enough," I said, my voice flat, final. "You're not getting another dime from me." The restaurant went eerily quiet. Brian froze, but before he could respond, my father slammed his fork down on the plate, his expression turning to stone. "How dare you say no to your own brother?" I turned to my father, disbelief tightening in my chest. "Are you serious?" His jaw was set, his eyes cold. "Brian is trying to rebuild his life, Lisa, and you want to punish him for it?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "By lying to me? By using my money for luxury vacations while his kids wear secondhand clothes?" My mother, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke. "Lisa, he's your brother. Family takes care of each other." I shook my head. "No, I took care of him for 2 years, and he lied." Brian scoffed, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. "Fine, I won't do it again. Happy? No." I pushed my chair back and stood. "I'm done." I could feel the weight of every stare in the restaurant. Some of our relatives shifted uncomfortably. A few of them, like my cousin Emma, watched with quiet satisfaction. They had probably seen this coming before I did. But Brian? He didn't look remorseful. He looked annoyed. Then I remembered something. "Oh," I said, my voice light, casual. "And I'm also canceling the payments on your car loan." The words had barely left my mouth before the whole table erupted. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her chest like I had struck her. "Lisa, you can't do that." My father's face darkened, his voice dropping to a furious growl. "That car is how your mother gets around. Do you want to leave us stranded?" I crossed my arms. I wanted to help, but not like this. Not anymore. Brian shot up from his chair, knocking his napkin to the floor. "You're unbelievable." "No," I said coolly. "What's unbelievable is that you expect me to bankroll your life while you lie to me." The tension was suffocating. The waitstaff had stopped refilling drinks. Diners at other tables were glancing over, pretending not to listen. My mother reached for my arm, her voice softer now, pleading. "Lisa, please. Your brother needs you. We need you. I pulled away. No, Mom, you need me to keep paying for your mistakes. For the first time, Brian didn't have a snarky comeback. He just stood there, his face tight with anger, fists clenched at his sides. I grabbed my purse. I'm leaving. No one tried to stop me, but as I walked away, I heard my mother whisper, her voice trembling with something close to desperation. If we lose that car, Lisa, I don't know what will happen to me. I didn't turn around. I kept walking. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't carrying someone else's burden, but I had no idea that this was just the beginning. I walked out of the restaurant, my heart hammering in my chest. The warm night air hit me like a wave, but it did nothing to cool the fire burning under my skin. For 2 years, I had cut back on my own life so that Brian wouldn't have to struggle. And for what? So he could sip cocktails in the Maldives while I worked overtime to make sure his rent was paid? I reached my car, gripping the door handle as I took a deep breath. Don't cry. Don't get angry. Just be done with it. But as soon as I sat behind the wheel, my phone started blowing up. Brian, what the hell, Lisa? My rent just bounced. Fix it. I stared at the message, my pulse spiking. He didn't even bother pretending to be sorry. No explanation. No apology, just fix it. Then my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again and again. Then Brian. Then my father. By the time I pulled into my apartment parking lot, I had 15 missed calls. I didn't check the voicemails. I already knew what they would say. I went inside, locked the door, and pulled up my banking app. First, I canceled the automatic payments for Brian's rent and utilities. Then I moved on to my parents' car loan, the one I had been covering for nearly a year because they had sworn they couldn't afford it. Not my problem anymore. A strange sense of relief settled over me. It felt like I had just severed invisible chains I hadn't even realized I was dragging. Then my phone vibrated again. Mom, Lisa, we need to talk. Call me back now. I ignored it. Then another message. Mom, I hope you're happy. If I end up in the hospital from stress, it'll be your fault. My fingers tightened around the phone. The guilt trip was starting. Then Brian again. Brian, you're seriously doing this? You're just going to let me and my kids end up homeless? You're unbelievable. I took a deep breath before replying. Me, you lied to me for 2 years. You said you were struggling, but you used my money for vacations. I helped because I thought you needed it. You don't. You're on your own now. The response was instant. Brian, wow, you're such a selfish bitch. Do you have any idea how hard it is to be a single dad? I needed that trip. I was trying to meet someone so I wouldn't have to struggle forever. My blood pressure spiked. Me, your kids are wearing hand-me-downs while you sip cocktails at a 5-star resort. You're not looking for a partner. You're looking for a sugar mama. And you expected me to pay for it. Silence. I thought that was the end of it. Then my father called. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Are you out of your mind? He snapped the second I answered. I sighed, rubbing my temple. What do you want, Dad? I want to know why the hell you canceled the car payments. I almost laughed. That's what this is about? You counted on me? I repeated, stunned. This was supposed to be temporary while you got back on your feet. It's been a year. You can't just take that away, he said, voice rising. I can, I said, and I did. That's unforgivable, he growled. You're punishing your own family over a stupid misunderstanding. I gritted my teeth. Misunderstanding? Brian conned me for 2 years. It's called helping your brother, my father snapped. Something you clearly don't understand. I hung up. I told myself that was it. I had said my piece. They would be angry for a while, but eventually they'd move on. I underestimated them. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. Brian, Mom, Dad. Even a couple of texts from my aunt asking what the hell was going on. Then came the knocking. Loud, rapid, angry. I already knew who it was before I even checked the peephole. I swung the door open to find my mother and Brian standing there, arms crossed, both looking like they were ready to tear me apart. We need to talk, my mother said, pushing past me into the apartment. Brian followed, slamming the door behind him. What the hell is wrong with you, Lisa? He spat. I crossed my arms. Good morning to you too. Mom ignored that. You're going to fix this. Now. I let out a short laugh. Fix what? The fact that I stopped letting you guys use me as a personal ATM? Brian threw his hands up. You're being insane. I have bills to pay, Lisa. My kids need a home. You can't just cut me off like that. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. You mean the same kids you dumped on Mom and Dad so you could run off to the Maldives? His jaw tightened. It was one trip, with my money. Mom stepped in. Listen, I understand you're upset, but you're taking this too far. You can't just abandon your family like this. I stared at her, incredulous. Abandon? I laughed bitterly. I gave Brian thousands of dollars. I paid for your car. I helped every time you asked. And what did I get in return? Brian groaned. You're being so dramatic. You're my sister. You're supposed to help me. I shook my head. Not like this. Mom's expression darkened. If you don't help him, what do you expect him to do? End up on the street? And us too? Is that what you want? I exhaled sharply. You guys are not my responsibility. Brian had plenty of money, but he spent it on himself. That's on him. Brian's voice dropped. I swear, Lisa, if you don't fix this, I cut him off. You'll what? Go on another vacation? Buy a new designer bag? Cry to mom and dad some more? His face turned red with anger. You don't understand, Lisa, he snapped. You have no idea what it's like to be a single dad, and you have no idea what it's like to be used by your own family, I shot back. Mom grabbed my arm, her voice suddenly softer. Please, Lisa, if you stop helping, I don't know what will happen to me. My health is already bad if I end up in the hospital over this. I pulled away, my stomach turning. Don't do that. Don't ever use that against me. Brian let out a sharp breath. Fine, be selfish, but you're making a huge mistake. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. They both glared at me, but after a long pause, they left. I locked the door behind them, my hands trembling. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. I barely had time to catch my breath before my phone started buzzing again. Mom, I just left your place. I can't believe you'd turn your back on your own family. Brian, you're going to regret this. I turned off my phone and sank onto the couch, rubbing my temples. My body was still trembling, a mix of anger, exhaustion, and something else I didn't want to name guilt. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had spent my entire life being conditioned to believe that saying no was the same as betrayal. But I wasn't going to let them pull me back in. That night, around 10 p.m., the knocking started again. I ignored it at first, assuming it was Brian or my mother trying for round 2, but it didn't stop. It became more insistent, louder. I checked the peephole. It was my mother. I hesitated. Letting her in meant another exhausting conversation, another guilt trip, another hour of manipulation. But if I didn't open the door, she'd probably just stand there all night, calling me until I caved. I sighed and opened the door. Mom, she pushed past me into the apartment before I could say another word. We need to talk. I shut the door, already regretting this. If this is about Brian, it's about me, Lisa. Something in her voice made me stop. I turned to see her holding a small white bottle in her hand. My stomach dropped. What are you doing? Her eyes were glassy, her lips pressed together in a trembling line. I can't take this. The stress, the shame, my own daughter turning her back on her family. She twisted the cap off the bottle. My heart pounded. Mom, stop. Tears welled in her eyes. Maybe if I weren't around, you'd feel bad for what you've done. Panic surged through me as I lunged forward, grabbing the bottle from her hands. I turned it over, reading the label. Over-the-counter sleep aids, not even prescription strength. She wasn't actually going to do anything. This was a performance. I exhaled sharply, gripping the bottle in my hands. You really came all the way here to fake a suicide attempt just to manipulate me? She sniffled, dabbing at her eyes. I wouldn't have to if you weren't being so cruel. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my throat. You're unbelievable. She wiped her tears away, her expression hardening almost instantly. It's not just about Brian. You cut us off too. You left your own parents to struggle. I clenched my jaw. You're struggling because you expected me to keep bailing you out forever. That's not my problem. Her face twisted with anger. Undo this, right now. I took a step back. Go home, Mom. She stared at me, her lips pressed together, and in a whisper she said, Fine. But if I end up in the hospital, you'll have to live with it. I didn't say a word. She turned and walked out. I locked the door behind her, my entire body tense. Then my phone vibrated again. Brian, wow. She just left your place. You really wouldn't even help our mother? Dad, I always knew you were selfish, but this? You're dead to me. I turned off my phone. I told myself it was over. I was wrong. The real nightmare started the next morning. The smear campaign. I woke up to an email from my boss. Subject, urgent, HR complaint. My stomach twisted. I clicked it open. Lisa, an anonymous complaint has been filed against you regarding the misuse of company funds. HR has scheduled a meeting to discuss this matter immediately. Please confirm your availability. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. I knew exactly who was behind this. Brian. Or worse, Brian and my parents. This wasn't just family drama anymore. They were trying to ruin me. I grabbed my phone and called my boss directly. "Hey, I just got your email. Can I come in and clear this up now?" His voice was careful. "Yeah, I'll be honest, Lisa. I was surprised to see this complaint. It doesn't seem like you." That was my first sign of hope. If he had doubts, that meant Brian's plan was already starting to crack. I drove straight to the office, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. When I arrived at HR, I sat down and calmly walked them through everything. I pulled up my financial records, proving I hadn't misused a single cent of company money. I even told them the truth that I had family members who were upset with me for cutting them off financially. By the time I left the meeting, the complaint had been dismissed. But I wasn't done. The confrontation, I drove straight to my parents' house. I wasn't going to wait for another attack. I was going to end this. When I walked in, my father was sitting on the couch, watching TV, like nothing had happened. Brian was there too, scrolling through his phone. My mother emerged from the kitchen, freezing when she saw me. "Lisa," she said carefully, "you should have called before coming over." I ignored her. I looked directly at Brian. "You tried to get me fired." He didn't even flinch. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone, opened the email from HR, and held it up. "You really think I wouldn't find out?" He scoffed. "You can't prove it was me." I turned to my parents. "And you two? You just let this happen?" My father waved a hand. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. If you had just kept helping your brother, none of this would have happened." My breath left me in a slow, controlled exhale. "Let me make this very clear," I said, my voice steady. "If any of you contact me again, if you so much as breathe in my direction, I will go to the police." Brian rolled his eyes. "For what?" "For harassment," I said coolly. "For making false accusations against me. For sending Jessica's boyfriend to my door to threaten me." My mother's face paled. "Lisa, let's not take this too far." I cut her off. "Too far? You escalated this the moment you tried to ruin my job." I lifted my phone. "I have screenshots of texts, call logs, everything the first need to prove what you've been doing. If you don't leave me alone, I will press charges." Silence. My father's jaw tightened. Brian's smug expression finally faded. My mother looked like she was about to cry again, but for once, she held her tongue. I turned to leave. "I mean it," I said. "Stay away from me." Then I walked out. For the first time, I felt free. But it wasn't over yet. For the first time in years, I felt like I had finally taken back control of my life. I thought that after the confrontation at my parents' house, they would finally back off, that they would see I wasn't playing their games anymore, that they had lost. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to my cousin Emma calling me. The moment I answered, she blurted, "Lisa, what the hell is going on? I just heard from Aunt Linda that you got fired for stealing from your job." My stomach dropped. "What?" She said your mother told her, and that you've been having a mental breakdown and pushing the family away. I exhaled sharply. Of course. If they couldn't manipulate me directly, they'd try to ruin my reputation instead. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages from distant relatives. Some were concerned, asking if I was okay. Others, like my uncle, were more blunt. "Uncle Rick, Lisa, what's this I hear about you gambling and losing your job? Call me." My grandmother even left a voicemail, her voice shaking as she said she was praying for me because my parents had told her I was in crisis. I felt a sickening mix of anger and exhaustion. They weren't just attacking me personally anymore. They were trying to turn my entire family against me. I refused to let them win. Setting the record straight, I pulled up the family group chat, the one where all my aunts, uncles, cousins, and extended relatives shared everything from holiday plans to baby pictures. And I started typing, I'm hearing a lot of lies about me, so I want to set the record straight. I cut off financial support to my parents and Brian because they were using me. They retaliated by spreading false rumors and even tried to get me fired. None of what they're saying is true. If anyone has questions, ask me directly. I hit send, then I sat back and waited. At first, there was silence. Then the messages started rolling in. Some relatives messaged me privately, offering their support. My aunt called me, furious not at me, but at my parents. "I knew something was off," she said. "They always expected you to take care of Brian, but I never imagined they'd go this far." Then my uncle messaged my father directly in the group chat. "Uncle Rick, leave Lisa alone. If you keep this up, you're going to lose the rest of the family." That was when the calls stopped. The texts stopped. And finally, after years of being used, manipulated, and emotionally blackmailed, I was free. A new beginning even after they finally backed off. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were just waiting for their next chance. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next week, but eventually they would try again, and I wasn't going to give them the opportunity. That night, I made a decision. I was done with them forever. The next morning, I started looking for jobs in another state. I had always thought about leaving, but something had always held me back, probably that same stupid sense of obligation to my family. But now, there was nothing keeping me here. Within 2 weeks, I had a job lined up in a new city, with a better salary and a fresh start. I didn't tell anyone. I quietly packed my things, sold what I didn't need, and sat in my empty apartment the night before my move, realizing just how much of my life I had wasted on them. For 2 years, I had put Brian's needs ahead of my own. I had skipped vacations, worked overtime, cut my own expenses all so he could live better than I did. And my parents? They were never on my side. No matter how much I gave, it was never enough because in their eyes, I wasn't family. I was a resource, an ATM with a heartbeat. But not anymore. I changed my number, blocked them on everything, deleted old messages, old emails, anything that connected me to them. Then I got in my car and drove away. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a clean break. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't living for someone else. I was finally living for me. Story 2. I always thought that trust was something unshakable, something you built over time like a sturdy house. But in the span of a few weeks, mine started to crack. And before I knew it, the whole thing collapsed. It started small. My younger sister, Lily, had always been outgoing, a little over the top with her affection, but I had never really thought much of it. She was getting married soon, and I figured the excitement of wedding planning was making her extra bubbly. That's what I told myself when I first noticed how she acted around my boyfriend, Ethan. At first, it was just little things, laughing a bit too hard at his jokes, playfully hitting his arm when he said something sarcastic. Harmless, right? But the more I paid attention, the clearer it became. She found reasons to touch him, fixing the collar of his shirt, brushing something imaginary off his sleeve. Her eyes lingered on him when she thought no one was looking. I tried to push away the unease gnawing at me, but my gut wouldn't let me. One night after dinner with my family, where Lily had been particularly giggly and touchy with Ethan, I brought it up to him. "Did you notice how Lily was acting tonight?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Ethan furrowed his brows. "What do you mean?" I hesitated, not wanting to sound paranoid. "She's just a little too friendly with you." He let out a small laugh. "Come on, she's just excited about the wedding. You're overthinking this." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the unease didn't go away. From then on, I started watching more closely. It wasn't in my head. She always found a way to be near him. If there was an open seat next to him, she took it. If we were at a family gathering, she managed to pull him into conversations that didn't even involve her. Every little thing added up, making me feel more and more like a third wheel in my own relationship. Then, at a family barbecue, I saw something that made my stomach turn. I had stepped inside for just a moment to grab a drink, to breathe. When I walked back out, I saw them. Lily and Ethan were standing close, whispering, too close. Her hand was on his arm, her head tilted in that way I had seen before when she was flirting. The moment they noticed me, they jumped apart. A wave of nausea rolled over me. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't storm over and demand answers. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and kept my composure. But that night, when Ethan and I were alone, I confronted him. "What were you and Lily talking about earlier?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected me to bring it up. "Just wedding stuff," he said with a shrug. "She was asking about music playlists." I stared at him, searching his face for something: guilt, hesitation, anything. And that required standing so close. His jaw tensed. "Are we really doing this?" "Yes," Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his hand down his face. "Look, I don't know what's going on in your head, but there's nothing happening between me and Lily." I clenched my fists. "Then why does she act like this? Why does she go out of her way to be around you?" He groaned. "Maybe she's just friendly. Maybe she doesn't realize it." I scoffed. "She realizes it." We argued back and forth, going in circles. He told me I was overreacting. I told him he was being naive. In the end, neither of us got anywhere. The next morning, I knew I had to go straight to the source. I called Lily and asked if we could meet for coffee. She agreed without hesitation, her usual chipper voice making my skin crawl. When we sat down, she dove into wedding talk, oblivious or pretending to be to my tension. I let her ramble for a few minutes before cutting her off. "We need to talk about Ethan," I said. Her smile faltered for just a second. "What about him? I've noticed how you act around him. The way you laugh at everything he says, the way you touch him." I leaned in. "Lily, it's inappropriate." She blinked at me. Then she laughed. "Oh my God, are you serious?" "Dead serious." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You think I'm flirting with Ethan? I know you are." Her expression twisted into one of disbelief, mock offense. "Wow, you must be really insecure to think that." The words stung, but I held my ground. "This isn't about insecurity. It's about boundaries." She let out an exaggerated sigh. "You're being ridiculous." I shook my head. "I'm not, and I need you to stop." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not going to sit here and listen to this." With that, she grabbed her purse and walked out. I sat there, staring at the spot where she had been, my stomach twisting. When I got home, Ethan was waiting for me. "How did it go?" he asked cautiously. I sighed. She denied everything, said I was being paranoid. He ran a hand through his hair. "Maybe she's right." I felt my heart drop. "So, you think I'm crazy too?" His face softened. "No, that's not what I'm saying. I think you're letting this get to you more than it should." I looked away, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Or maybe you just don't want to see it." The tension between us didn't fade. Over the next few days, Lily ignored me. My parents, having caught wind of the fight, took her side. My mother even called me, furious. "She's getting married in a week. How could you accuse her of something so awful?" "I know what I saw," I shot back. She didn't want to hear it. And then, 1 week before the wedding, everything shattered. I showed up at my parents' house, hoping to smooth things over. As I reached the front door, I heard whispers coming from the side of the house. Something in my gut told me to check. So I did, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Lily and Ethan kissing. My sister wrapped around my boyfriend, his hands gripping her like she belonged to him. They were so lost in each other. They didn't even see me standing there. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. My stomach twisted, and before I could stop myself, I let out a choked, "What the hell?" They froze. Ethan spun around, his face draining of color. Lily's eyes went wide, panic flashing across her features. I stared at them, my heart pounding in my chest. Everything I had felt, the doubt, the suspicion, the gut-wrenching anxiety, it had all been real. And the worst part? I had been the only one who saw it coming. Time stopped. Lily and Ethan stood there, frozen like guilty kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. But this wasn't some childish mistake. This was betrayal, raw and unforgivable. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My legs wobbled. My breath caught in my throat, and for a split second, I thought I might actually pass out. But then, just as quickly, something else took over, pure, seething rage. "What the hell is this?" My voice came out sharp, shaking with fury. Ethan's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Lily's face turned pale, her eyes darting around like she was looking for an escape route. "It's not what it looks like," Ethan finally stammered, his voice weak, pathetic. I let out a bitter laugh, a sound I barely recognized as my own. "Oh, really? So you weren't just shoving your tongue down my sister's throat?" Lily took a shaky step forward, her hands raised like she could somehow calm the situation down. "Listen, No," I snapped, stepping back. "You don't get to listen me, Lily. You don't get to explain your way out of this." She flinched. "I swear, it just happened. Just happened." My voice cracked on the words. "You accidentally tripped and landed on my boyfriend's lips? That's your excuse?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes like the coward he was. "It was a mistake." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "How long?" They both looked at me, confused. "How long?" I repeated, my tone ice cold. Lily swallowed hard. It's not like that. "How long?" I roared this time, my patience snapping like a brittle twig. Silence. Then Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "A couple months." Something inside me shattered. I had suspected Lily had been flirting, had been too close, too giggly. But a couple of months? While I had been gaslit into thinking I was paranoid, while I had tried to convince myself I was overreacting, these two had been sneaking around behind my back. I felt sick. I turned to Lily, my voice eerily calm now. "You're getting married in a week." She had the nerve to look guilty. I know. Did Mark ever cross your mind at all?" Her face crumpled at the mention attention of her fiance, Mark, the man she was supposed to be committing her life to, the man who was probably picking out his wedding suit, while his bride-to-be was fooling around with her sister's boyfriend. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she whispered. I let out a sharp breath, shaking my head. "Of course you did. You just didn't mean to get caught." Neither of them had anything to say to that. I turned on my heel, storming toward my car. Ethan reached for my arm. "Please, let's talk." I yanked away like his touch burned. "We're done." His face crumbled. "Babe, don't call me that." With shaking hands, I climbed into my car, slammed the door shut, and drove away, ignoring the fact that my vision was blurring with tears. When I got home, I packed a bag. I didn't even think about it. I just grabbed whatever clothes I could stuff into my duffel, threw in my essentials, and left my phone on silent as it buzzed nonstop with calls from Ethan, from Lily, from my mother. I didn't want to hear whatever bullshit excuses they had. Instead, I drove to a hotel on the other side of town, checked in, and let myself collapse onto the bed, staring at the ceiling in a daze. I had lost my boyfriend and my sister in the same breath. The pain was unbearable. For hours, I just lay there, numb, trying to process the fact that the two people I had trusted the most had stabbed me in the back. The betrayal was so deep, so cutting, that it felt like I had been hollowed out from the inside. I don't know how long I stayed like that before I finally sat up and reached for my phone. Not to check Ethan's pathetic texts, not to hear my mother tell me I was overreacting, but to call Mark. He deserved to know the truth. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. "Hey, what's up?" His voice was light, clueless to the storm about to hit him. I took a deep breath. "Mark, the first need to tell you something, and I'm really sorry." Mark didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just listened. And when I finished telling him what I had seen, the betrayal I had uncovered, he was silent for a long time. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice eerily calm. "Thank you for telling me." That was it. No anger, no disbelief, just a quiet, steady acknowledgement. "Mark, what are you going to do?" I asked hesitantly. Another pause. "Then, I don't know, but I'm not marrying her." And just like that, my sister's perfect wedding started to crumble. For the next few days, I avoided my family. My mother left endless voicemails, demanding to know why I was trying to ruin Lily's wedding. My father was a little more measured, but he still urged me to be the bigger person. It was infuriating. Lily betrayed me. Ethan betrayed me. And yet, somehow, I was the problem. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I waited. And on the day of the wedding, I got a call from my cousin Emma. "Oh my God," she breathed into the phone. "You won't believe what just happened." My heart started pounding. "What?" She exhaled sharply, like she was still trying to process it. "Mark, he just called off the wedding." I sucked in a breath. "He did?" "Yeah, right at the altar." I sat down, gripping the edge of the bed. "Tell me everything." Emma launched into it. Apparently, everything had gone smoothly at first. Guests had arrived. Lily had walked down the aisle in her perfect white dress, and Mark had been standing there, waiting. But then right before they said their vows, Mark took a deep breath, turned to the crowd, and said, "I can't do this." Gasps, shock. Lily's face drained of color. And then he exposed everything. Right in front of their family, their friends, and a church full of guests, Mark told them all what Lily had done. That she had cheated on him with Ethan. That she had lied. That she was not the woman he thought she was. Lily burst into tears. My mother looked like she might pass out. And Mark? He just walked away. The wedding was over. The fallout was instant. People whispered, gossiped. The perfect bride had been unmasked. And as for me, for the first time in weeks, I felt a little lighter. Because the truth was out. And for once, I wasn't the crazy one. After Emma hung up, I sat there for a long time, just staring at the wall. My mind kept replaying her words Mark had called off the wedding. Right at the altar, in front of everyone. I had expected him to break things off, sure, but I hadn't thought he'd do it like that. Not in such a public, dramatic way. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to feel bad for Lily. She had spent months sneaking around, lying, making me feel crazy for suspecting something was wrong. She had betrayed Mark the same way she had betrayed me. So if she had to stand up there in her perfect white dress and watch everything crumble around her, then so be it. I wouldn't be shedding any tears for her. Still, I knew this wasn't over. Not for me. The first call came from my mother. I didn't answer. Then my father. Ignored. Then Lily. I turned my phone off. I didn't want to hear whatever excuse she had. Didn't want to hear my mom guilt trip me about how I had ruined my sister's life. I had done nothing wrong. For once, the truth had spoken for itself. The next morning, I finally checked my messages. Mom, how could you do this? You humiliated your sister in front of everyone. Dad, call me, please. Lily, you told him? I snorted at that last one. Of course I told him. Did she really think I was going to keep her dirty little secret? That I would let Mark stand up there, pledging his life to her, while she was messing around with my boyfriend? I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went downstairs to grab some coffee from the hotel lobby. I felt strangely calm, like my body had finally processed the betrayal and decided to let go of the weight. I had lost my boyfriend. I had lost my sister. I had probably lost my parents too. And yet, I didn't regret a damn thing. Later that afternoon, I finally answered my dad's call. He sighed as soon as I picked up. You okay? I let out a breath. I don't know. That's fair, he said. There was a long pause. Then, he said quietly, you know your mother is furious. I figured. She thinks you did this out of spite. I scoffed. Right, because Lily wasn't the one cheating on her fiance with my boyfriend. She's having a hard time accepting it. Maybe she should direct her anger at the person who actually destroyed the wedding. Dad sighed again. I know, I blinked. Wait, you do? She's your mother, he said. She loves you both, but that doesn't mean she's right. For the first time in days, I felt a lump form in my throat. So you don't think I overreacted? No, he said firmly. I think you did the right thing. My breath hitched. Then why won't Mom see that? Because it's easier to be mad at you than to accept what Lily did. I swallowed hard. That's not fair. I know. His voice was soft. But give her time. Another pause. Then, hesitantly, he asked, are you coming home? I glanced around the hotel room. I had been hiding out, trying to avoid the fallout, but I couldn't stay here forever. Eventually, I would have to face everything. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I think I'm ready. When I got home, my mother barely looked at me. I walked into the kitchen, setting my bag down, and she just stood by the sink, scrubbing a plate like it had personally offended her. Dad gave me a small nod from the table. Hey, kid. Hey. Mom's grip tightened on the sponge. I took a deep breath. Mom, how could you? She turned to me, her voice low, shaking. I stared at her. Are you seriously blaming me for this? You didn't have to tell Mark, she snapped. You could have handled this privately. I let out a dry laugh. Handled it how, Mom? Pretended like it never happened? Let Lily marry him while sneaking around with Ethan behind his back? Her nostrils flared. It wasn't your place. I shook my head, my hands trembling. You're right. It wasn't my place to destroy the wedding. That was Lily's job. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance to argue. For months, she flirted with my boyfriend, lied to me, made me feel like I was crazy. And now that she's facing the consequences of her actions, I'm the bad guy? Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. I lost my boyfriend, I said, my voice cracking. I lost my sister. And you're mad at me? Silence. Dad sighed. Sweetheart, no, I cut in. I get it now. No matter what Lily does, you'll always defend her. Mom turned away, gripping the counter like she needed something to hold on to. I swallowed down the lump in my throat. I'm done. Her head snapped up. What does that mean? It means I'm done chasing after people who don't give a damn about me, I said, my voice steady. It means I'm done being treated like the villain in my own story. I grabbed my bag and turned for the door. Wait, Dad called. I hesitated. I'm proud of you, he said softly. I blinked back tears. Thanks, Dad. Then I walked out. A week later, I moved into my own apartment. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small one-bedroom with creaky floors and a too-loud fridge. But it was mine. I blocked Ethan, blocked Lily, stopped picking up my mom's calls, when all she wanted to do was tell me how much I had hurt the family. Mark and I stayed in touch, though. He checked in every now and then, mostly to joke about how he dodged a bullet. I owe you one, he said once. Nah, I told him. You just owed it to yourself to know the truth. And me? I was still healing, still learning how to trust myself again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Because in the end, losing people who never valued me wasn't really a loss at all.